Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. I have been reading the Gulag Archipelago by Alexandr Solzhenitsyn, and I have gotten a little bit more into it. I forget where I was in the video I made yesterday, page 160 maybe. I am now at 226, so that is more than a third of the way through Volume 1, which is all that concerns me right now. And my reading of it has sped up a little bit. It occurs to me that this book is exactly the reason I want to improve my reading skills, because I want to be able to read a book that I don't really like so much. I want to not be put off by that. I want to be able to nail it, if you will, without too much of an outlay in time. I'm not there as far as speed yet, but just with the dedication of daily reading, I am covering more ground than I ever could have years ago, when my laziness really prevented me from plowing into any work unless it was something that I was really enthused about or something that I was really desperate to learn about. So at that point, he had just begun to interject his personal experience, and the whole narrative has changed. All of a sudden, he gives a little bit of description of his first day in the Gulag, or in captivity, if you will. And then all of a sudden, it's as though, without any development, as though he's suddenly an old-timer, and everything written from thence forward seems to be from the perspective of an old-timer. And it's talking about daily life in the cell with his cellmates in this chapter, which is titled First Cell, First Love. And he compares your first experience in a cell with companions to the experience of first love, something that changes your life. Your life was not the same before, and it will not be the same after, and kind of the reference point forever after, a fixed place in time, in the way that one's first love tends to be. So the reason I say that I don't really want to read it is at the point where I'm at, and so I've read, I don't know, maybe 60, 65 pages of the narrative now of how things have gone in the cell. He describes their routines, when they get to use the bathroom, when they get to walk in the out of doors for 20 minutes in the day. A couple of his cellmates, the kind of conversations that they have. So nothing earth-shaking has happened as yet. So the first part of the book before this was really setting up the history of the Gulag system. And so now he's setting up his daily life in his place of captivity. So it's all very sort of mundane, pedestrian stuff. Now, the reason I don't really care for it is that at this point, it reads just like a standard prison memoir. And I've read a couple of other prison memoirs. Nawal al-Saadawi's Memoirs from the Woman's Prison, if that's the right title, something like that comes to mind, which I read years ago. And Ngugi wa Thiong'o has a prison memoir as well, which I also read years ago. Both of their names I may not have pronounced correctly, my apologies for that. Now, in both cases, I find prison memoirs to be of a stamp, so to speak. There's sort of a commonality to them, which is telling what they did in their daily life. And so the fault with your typical prison memoir, as I imagine it to be, I mean, I have not read them exhaustively. I believe I have read one else somewhere, but I don't remember which. The fault is that they, to use Oscar Wilde's way of talking about things, they talk about what the author did and not about what the author thought. Now, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, his prison captivity really led the way to all kinds of books, of essays, of thoughts about colonialism and the situation which put him into prison, which are marvelous. But the narrative of the actual day-to-day prison experience was not as compelling, if I am remembering right, but I have almost no memory of this, not as compelling as his books in which he discusses ideas. Now, this is my bias. My proclivity is to prefer ideas. And of course, none of these writers that I've mentioned is without ideas. Don't get me wrong about that. But it's just that a large part of the narrative is occupied with the routines of daily life. I would, at this juncture, I would say that Solzhenitsyn's ideas are not as good as Dostoevsky's. Not that I think Dostoevsky's ideas are all that deep or all that original, but the distinction there is that Dostoevsky has something else going for him, which is the command of the narrative fictional technique, which at least so far Solzhenitsyn has not displayed. This is not a work of fiction. It is a work of journalism. It is a memoir, at least thus far. So my fear for the book is that it's going to be a memoir, but it's going to be Russian-style prison memoir, meaning big, you know, as opposed to any of those that I've read before. So we'll see, but the reading of it, it always takes me time to adjust to a new book, especially something as startlingly different as this. It takes me time to get accustomed to it, and so my early reading is always much slower than as I move into a work. But what I still find holding me back is that reading about somebody's imprisonment is not a pleasant subject. Some commenter on a BookTube video that I just watched the other day said, "I love a book that just tears my soul apart." Not so for me. I really don't want a book that tears my soul apart. And this is threatening to do that. So I think instead of reading this in alternation with Runciman's History of the Crusades, I plan to read one volume of that, then one volume of this, one volume of that, one of this, for all 3 volumes of each respectively. Is not perhaps the best technique to have applied for tackling this particular work. I think what would have been better was to focus on this and then perhaps have something lighthearted short stories, if you will, or but something, you know, the Night of the Living Res, which I read, it's not lighthearted, but the fact of the shortened form of the short story, even something like Alice Munro stories, reading those in conjunction with this would help to make the best use of one's personal reading time, because when you got tired of this and you read the narrative, and it's still very anecdotal, when you got tired of this and you just say, I can't take it anymore, then you could flip to something else and just keep reading, but not reading this. So this is where I stand with this. I still don't expect to plow through it with great rapidity, but I'm doing what I can, and I'm not going to let it go at this point. I will keep on reading it and let you know how it goes as I move forward. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.